assessment of the actual damage from this earthquake. Turkey's President Erdogan has also spoken to the governor of Kahramanmaraş, the province where this earthquake has taken place. He has conveyed his well wishes to all citizens affected by the earthquake, adding that the country's disaster agency, AFAD, and other units are on alert. Hassan, we can see the damage in these initial videos that we're seeing from the region of extensive damage, collapsed buildings. What are the challenges in trying to reach people who may be trapped? It must be a very, very delicate situation with buildings that have collapsed or partially collapsed, in rescuing people, but at the same time not trying to cause further damage.
That's right. There's a huge logistical challenge that the authorities have to deal with as well. So, for example, when you're confronted with a site of 2 or 3 collapsed buildings, you have to prioritize as well. You have to gain a lot of knowledge and information from the locals. So, for example, at one building site where the collapse happened later, people may have had the chance to evacuate. So once authorities have this information, they would spend less time there, and they would prioritize building sites where people may not have had the chance to leave. You know, information like how quickly did a building collapse after the shockwaves were felt is something that's really going to help in prioritizing and possibly saving many lives. So it's these challenges, and they have to take these decisions very quickly. Once people are pulled out, they're given any first aid or medical treatment then that's needed. It's also about protecting the people who have not been injured in this, protecting them from the effects of the cold weather and so forth. So, you know, all these things all of a sudden become very high priority. And I think what we find is that the authorities have been able to develop their capacity significantly over the last 2 decades. We've seen response time drastically cut. We've seen other long-term and mid-term plans into place. So, for example, building codes, highlighting some of the areas that were marked as dangerous in terms of their construction. So in some parts of the country, we've seen a reconstruction that's taken place. The housing societies have been redeveloped and so forth and so on. So, you know, there's immediate action that you have to take. And then over the last 2 decades, we've been seeing planning that has been put in place in terms of minimizing the risk. And if you look at the figures over the last few years, you know, we've had a few earthquakes of very high magnitude, you know, in 7 and in 6 and so forth and so on. But the casualty figure has been dropping. There is this pattern, and authorities are saying that it's because of the steps that have been taken. It's also factors such as training the public to deal with a situation like this. But, you know, there's a lot of unpredictability that always comes with a situation like this. So at this point in time, I think one of the items that's going to be really high on the agenda of people is that hope. The hope that the damage could be limited and people could be saved.
Hassan, we're just learning from a security official in Diyarbakir that 17 buildings have collapsed and people are trapped under the rubble there. The governor of Turkey's Osmaniye province is saying that 5 people have died in this earthquake and 34 buildings have collapsed. Of course, it is still very early, and we'll get more information as the hours go on, and as certainly as the sun comes up. This earthquake striking in the province of Kahramanmaraş at 1:17 GMT. Hassan, can you just remind our viewers who may not be as familiar with Turkey, as of course we are here in the country? Many people will know Istanbul, of course, but when we talk about Diyarbakir, Malatya, Gaziantep, in areas that are directly affected by this earthquake. Many people might not be familiar with the geography of the region. Can you just give us a little bit of a briefing of the region for our viewers who might not be as familiar with it as we are?
Well, we're looking at areas primarily in the south of the country and also southeast of the country. If you look at countries around these areas, so for example, to the south, we've got Syria. As you move towards the southeast, you've got parts of Syria, you've got Iraq. As you move towards the east of the country, you've got Iran bordering some of these places. As we're getting more details of the provinces that have been affected, the magnitude of this is basically being determined in terms of the damage. Now, not in terms of the intensity of the earthquake. We know that it's a 7.8 earthquake, but as it turns out, the number of areas that have been affected and where there is possible major damage is actually way beyond what was initially determined. And I think this is something that was expected. We know many surrounding countries, for example, that have also felt these shock waves. So we're looking at the south and southeast of the country at this point in time. Of course, the earthquake has been felt in other parts of the country as well. But this is the area that has been marked at the moment by the Disaster Management Authority as the area that needs the most attention at this point in time.